right, friends. Well, from the city of Vaughan to Dundas Street, so many things in our daily lives are named after colonialists. With the legacies of these men being questioned, there are growing calls to rename, replace, or tear down memorials. To discuss this further, I'm joined by York University professor Carl James, who is also the school's senior advisor on equity and representation. Good morning, Carl. I am a fellow graduate of York University, so good to see you and love to all.
Good morning. Thanks very much for inviting me and to be talking to a graduate of York University.
Yes, I had a great time there. You guys do brilliant work, and we need to talk about this important conversation. First up, why are these memorials problematic? And we'll throw Ryerson University in there, too.
I think at this point, when we look back, we're starting to think about the reasons, the moral, social, and political reasons that we might have named things after people. And we're saying, listen, those kinds of reasons that existed then might be correct, but now we're using a different lens. We're trying to understand why we'd want these people or these representation to have a different kind of a language for our current population. Therefore, we are trying to think, no, it does not represent who we are now. And we need to stop doing what we used to do then. And so I think that this is a point where we're moving towards being more equitable, to be more representative of what we should be in terms of a society, inclusive of everyone, and speaking to the expectations of all members of the population.
What do you say, Professor James, to people who question it, saying, well, you're erasing history? What do you say to those people?
Of course not. This is not erasing of history. History remains the history. That information remains. It's what has happened, what has gone on. What we're doing is starting to think, is to rethink and to pay attention to what we must represent. What are we expected to do for everyone in society so that we represent everything? And what would be important here is not to say we will find that information in books. If these places remain, they're going to have other information that will talk about what really were some of the issues and some of the reasons why these people represent the society and represent the issues at that time. One of the interesting questions is, why were these people chosen, or why did these become symbols of particular of the society at that particular time, right? But what we're saying now is that those symbols don't represent who we are now, or we're not going to allow them to stand in the way they have stood all these years. So It's not really renaming history or erasing history. It's giving history what it is supposed to be. This is a more complete history. It's a history that takes into account everything about what we need to know.
And I love that you say these changes, because there's a Toronto working group working on them right now. They shouldn't just be implemented, but they shouldn't be just performative. It should go beyond that. How so?
Oh, absolutely. It's good to say, yes, we're going to remove these, we're going to rename, but we need to go more than just simply say rename it. But I would think if we're doing this, we're supposed to also include that information in the history books. We need to start talking about them in relation to what we're trying to represent now. So it's more than just simply removing them, but telling the history as it should be told.
True.
And engaging the people who need to be engaged around these things.
So how do we go about choosing then who gets renamed? Who should be considered? How do we all agree on that? Where do we begin?
You see, I don't know if there will be total agreement. After all, we live in a diverse society. We live with people who do not have necessarily the same kinds of ideas. So therefore, that question of who becomes the person to be represented, it becomes one of the things that will be debated. But at the same time, we must start thinking about whom are we going to invite and talk about. How do we want our society to be represented? How do we want the community in which we live to be represented? And so that's going to be I would think, a healthy debate, but we're not going to say, yes, this is the person and everybody's going to agree. It's going to be an ongoing discussion, but we have to come to some decision, because we have to be making that person represent the society as we know it.
Yeah, it's not to please all. It's to have these discussions, bring them all to the table, and then do what's right, ultimately. Thank you so much, Professor James. For more information, BT and City News will keep you updated with the latest on Dundas Street renaming and similar petitions as any changes are announced. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Love
Have a
to all
good
the
day.
faculty and students. Thank you.
Okay.
Right now, over to Mel.